Jake Oettinger gets the start. Unfortunately, it comes in a loss as Team USA falls to Sweden 2-1. Mikael Granlund excelling with Team Finland, and why the Stars will win the Stanley Cup or fall short once again. That's next on Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And I'm pleased to announce that Ryan Chambers of Starcastic Remarks is joining us for today's episode. We're going to discuss Four Nations. Unfortunately, Team USA falls to Team Sweden tonight by a final score of 2-1. We'll get his thoughts on everything taking place over the last few weeks. Ryan, how has the break treated you so far?
It's been nice, honestly, to get a little bit of a break. And other than the USA-Canada game where I had a little bit of anxiety, it's been a lot of fun to watch a lot of really good players play in the greatest sport in the world. I mean, we've talked about for so long how bad the NHL has been about getting in their own way and like growing the game. And I think really what they just needed is they needed a way to grow the game where they could also put money into their pocketbooks too. And this was the this is the perfect tournament for them. It was the perfect tournament for the players, for the fans. It's just been a great celebration of hockey. So, you know, for a very rare occurrence, hats off and hand claps to the NHL.
Yes, it's been a perfect marriage for the NHL. The good thing is Team USA will be in the final, which took some of the luster out of the game tonight. But let's get into it. Jake Oettinger makes his debut and thought he looked pretty good, was a bit shaky at first, which I think is to be expected. It probably had been, 12 or 13 days since he's last seen some game action. Unfortunately, it was the United States of hitting posts tonight. They hit 5 or 6 posts. If you look at the scoring chances, this is from Natural Stat Trick. USA outchanced Sweden 32-23 on scoring chances, and high dangers, it was 16-7. Unfortunately, the United States could just not finish any of their looks. They dominated late, but just unable to beat Ayrson in the post tonight. But what'd you make of Jake Oettinger, and what'd you make of the contest as a whole?
He was really good tonight, in my opinion, especially as the game went on. He got better, which is exactly what we've come to expect of Jake Oettinger. You know, maybe the first one he wants back.
Yeah, I thought it was a tid soft. I thought it was
exactly
still, but yeah,
exactly. It was still tipped, so it's not like it was just. It's not like it was the Bennington goal, the Gensel goal from against Bennington in the USA Canada game. It wasn't that bad, but you know that's probably one you want back. The second one, you know, it just completely screened. You never saw it, and it was also a really good shot. I mean, hats off to the Swedish guy who made the goal there. But you know, he made some really big saves, especially towards the end of the third period. That's exactly what you want. And it's just his buddies in front of him. The offense just didn't get it taken care of tonight. And you know, this is kind of like a side tangent to all of this, not just for Jake Oettinger, but I think what we're starting to see, and especially from not just the USA side, but the Canada side and the Finland side, is that the Stars have got some pretty good players. I mean,
yes,
like Jake Oettinger, this was his big, you know, debut in terms of, you know, United States hockey and international hockey. And then I think the biggest one that I think we were really surprised about is Thomas Harley getting called out of nowhere. I mean, I can't wait to talk to him, to ask him about what the, like, dude, how did you feel? What was it like? I mean, he's never going to experience that again. And I forgot who it was on Twitter that said it, but you know, his first NHL game was in the COVID bubble. Like his first ever NHL game was in the COVID bubble, with all the way back in the bonus era. And then his first international game is the way that it's just a man of many circumstances. And then, and we'll talk about it here in a second too, but Mikael Granlund, I mean, I put on Twitter after a while, especially after he scored the game winner against Sweden for the finish. I was like, this might be a bit more underrated than I thought. I mean, we all talked about how it was a very good signing,
Correct.
but I mean, the fact that he scores the overtime goal in a big game against his biggest rival, I would say, and then he goes out and scores 2 goals, leading the way to almost push Canada to where they kind of get a little shaky there. I mean, that's huge, absolutely huge. So, I mean, that shows what he can possibly do in the playoffs in the biggest moments when it really, really counts. So that gets me really excited for Mikael Granlund too. So like just all of these players that have come out for the Stars, if we're talking Stars wise, they've been big for their own countries. It's none bigger than Granlund, by the way.
I'm right there with you. It was awesome to see Granlund sort of have a coming out party a bit on a national stage, and score some big time goals for Team Finland. And I was so happy Jake Oettinger got the start as well, getting into a game. It means a lot for him, and it's in Boston. I don't think he got to play in the game in Boston when Dallas was there as well. I think DeSmith may have got the start. And of course, he has a history from playing in college in Boston. So it was a big deal, and he got better as the game went along, as you mentioned. Unfortunately, it came at a loss. And of course, the U.S. was very shorthanded up front. So I don't know about you. I think the injuries are a big bunch of baloney. I think they're perfectly fine, and they're just ready to go for Thursday night. Maybe I'm naive, but I think it's a bunch of baloney, and they're just resting. Even the Tkachuk one, I know it didn't look great, but for me, I just believe they're just playing some mind games right now, and they're all going to be ready to go for Thursday. What says you? Do you have some nerves when it comes to maybe the Tkachuk brothers won't be out? Because I will say, without them, U.S. doesn't really have an identity outside of Eichel, who, oh my God,
he was great.
We can get to him in a bit. But yeah, let's talk about the Tkachuk brothers and some of the injuries. Got any nerves there?
Absolutely. At least a little bit, because honestly, those two guys, I mean, they're really the ones who the NHL needs to be worshiping their feet right now, because they're the ones that got the whole US-Canada thing started. The first 10 minutes of that game on Saturday was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And it's due to them and the US that's their guys. And yeah, we could say all we want about Matthew Tkachuk too, but I mean, it's both of them. I mean, they're like a dynamic duo. They've bring a whole different level of hockey that, the U.S. is not necessarily known for in years past. They're kind of like the Philadelphia Flyers of the 70s, the Broad Street Bullies kind of way. And that's how their dad, Keith Tkachuk, played when he was playing as well for the Blues and for the Coyotes. So it's just fun to see. And the one that really worries me the most, honestly, is Charlie McAvoy, though. That one, in terms of U.S., like he is a very big player for the U.S. And there's only so many defensemen that they've gotten. We've seen what happened to Canada's depth with Makar getting sick, and then with Theodore getting hurt. So hopefully nothing comes of that. But yeah, I hope all those guys are in on Thursday.
It'll be a very, very highly anticipated final on Thursday. And I think sort of this whole tournament was sort of dictated to come to this juncture or to get to this point. And I think it'll just be a lot of fun. Now outside of a Stars perspective a bit, I want to circle back to Eichel, because I've always been a huge fan of his. He's probably the only Golden Knight I really just do not dislike. I think he's awesome. I love Jack Eichel because of the player he is, and I think this tournament is a perfect representation of the type of player he is, and he is an elite two-way forward in the NHL, and him back checking his balls off to break up like three. I mean, he saved 3 or 4 scoring chances in a meaningless game. Even at the end there with the empty net, he didn't have to track that hard. I think he was at the hash marks when Bratt had the puck, and he flies back to get a stick on it just to have an opportunity with a 6-on-5 to score a goal. And I predicted before the tournament that I think Eichel was going to be the MVP of this. I predicted USA to win, and I thought he would be the MVP. And man, watching him is a blast. It's weird, like having to pull for him. I'll say that. And I'm not rooting for Jack Eichel to destroy the Dallas Stars, but I've always liked his game. And man, he's so damn good and fun to watch.
He is, and it's nice to have tournaments like this because then you get to root for other players, right? And it's no offense to our Dallas Stars guys, but like it's fun to be able to root for, he's not here in the tournament, but Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes and, all of these players that, you don't normally get to root for. And especially the superstars. Those are the big ones that you like. It is so cool to be able to root for Jack Eichel for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
But like it goes to show like how good of a player he really is. And then like I'll reference my buddies from the Steve Dangle podcast that I was watching one of their streams afterwards, and he's like, "Whoa, wait, that's Connor McDavid," and I don't feel a twinge of anxiety. It's like I actually get to root for this guy. And like it's fun to see stuff like that too. Like these quote unquote super fans, I guess you could call them, and them getting to actually like root for, Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid and all of these other guys. It's fun. It's fun. And again, hats off to the NHL for doing this.
Okay, that's enough talk of other players other than Dallas Stars. That's enough for today's episode before everybody comes after us here. It is a Locked On Stars podcast. So we're going to get back to some Stars talk. We're going to talk about Mikael Granlund. I have a bit of a theory or maybe it's a prediction I want to share with you as well. So we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by SelectQuote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Olympics, which the NHL is going to return to next year. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. It's not all the one size fits all policies. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million. No medical exam required. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. So here is my theory that I've been mulling over the past couple of days. I now get to throw it out in the ether, and it may be more of a prediction, and maybe it's not as mind-blowing as I wish it would be, but I think, and this sort of has a tie-in with Mikael Granlund, I think the players in this tournament, and of course, they're all superstars, most of them, they're all very good, highly elite players in the NHL. But I think you're going to see the players that participated in this tournament, once they get to the postseason, are going to have like huge runs in the Stanley Cup playoffs because they're playing some of these hard, gritty, intense games. And yes, it's just 4 games for some of these teams. I get it. Maybe I'm overreacting, but you look at Mikael Granlund, you just mentioned it. Maybe I underestimated this trade a bit. I mentioned it as more of a Band-Aid, more of a patch to some of the problems. Maybe that's more inclined with what Cody Ceci was, but Granlund had such a great tournament, and you talked about in the first segment scoring some of those big goals. He may have a huge playoff run for Dallas, and he could possibly be an X factor moving forward. And maybe it wasn't as splashy as a deal as we thought when it was made. Your thoughts on that? I just think there's going to be some of these players that are going to have they're going to fly off the charts and be like, well, he did that in the 4 Nations, and now he's keeping that up here in some of these big do or die go home games.
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that's a stretch at all to say that, and especially when you don't have the All-Star game like this, so you have games that they actually care about, like even the game today, when this game between the U.S. and Sweden didn't matter all that much. But for U.S. it was on their home soil, and for Sweden they're trying to get a win before their tournament is over. So they both had a reason to play, and it was fantastic. And it builds up the anticipation and the anxiety and the heart and everything. And it's very weird, because this time of year when we're doing the All-Star game was not, kind of getting close to the same intensity level as the NHL playoffs. It's not. No. This is probably the closest thing that we've seen in years to a non-NHL game getting up to that intensity level that you would expect in a Game 7 in the playoffs, right? And it can't hurt that players like Granlund, like Hintz, like Esa scored a goal too. We didn't really talk about that. Yeah. Oettinger getting in a game that doesn't really matter, but it's still, he plays really well. That kind of stress, that kind of anticipation that gets thrown on players on these big level situations can only help in the playoffs, right? So it's cool for these players like Sandheim, for example, from Philadelphia. He's not going to get a chance to do that this year. Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit of a letdown going back to Philadelphia and being like, oh, well, we're kind of out of the playoffs. And
Thursday night against San Jose.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. A game that doesn't really matter. But I don't think it's far or wrong for you to say that this absolutely will help players like Mikael Granlund to show some kind of push in the NHL playoffs. And again, I'll say it, that that's going to be an extremely underrated move. I mean, clip this, tie this, whatever you want to do. And Granlund could be the difference in going from one round to the next, or, coming back from a 2-0 deficit or whatever. He's going to have some sort of huge benefit in the playoffs for the Dallas Stars to help them push in the right direction. So you're absolutely right. And I think it's going to show in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's got 4 assists since joining the Stars. Still waiting his first goal, which I find almost crazy. I feel like he's had 2 or 3 already, just based off how he's played here and sort of fit in with the Stars. But I mean, 49 points in 56 games this year. Granlund's going to be, I think, an impactful piece moving forward. Esa Lindell's a monster. He's probably the second best player outside of Granlund. I think you could even give him the MVP over Granlund. I know Granny had a couple of huge goals, but man, Esa Lindell played a lot. I think he clocked in at 27 minutes here against Canada. And he scored a goal. Roope Hintz was a bit of a ghost in this. He didn't shine brightly very much, but I think he was sort of just out of his element. Didn't seem like he was paired with the perfect line mates. I think there was just some chemistry issues up front for him. And I think a lot of his game does rely on some others to some degree, because he is so fast. You have to be on the same page. Like when you're with Robertson, it's like Robertson's like, okay, well, I can just throw it down the ice and Roope can go get it, sort of thing, because he's so fast. So there wasn't a whole lot from him, but just in general, your thoughts on Hintz and Lindell throughout the tournament.
I agree with you on Hintz. The first game, especially, that he played, it was just completely gone. Not completely gone. He was a ghost. He was just not there. The second game, he looked a lot better, and then in the game today, he looked a little bit better. Although he had that really, really bad turnover that led to a goal. But again, he's playing out of his element, right? So, like, who have been the best players in the tournament, right? We talk about McKinnon, who's been pretty good. We talk about Esa, who's been really good. But those guys were kind of playing in roles that they're used to with their regular NHL teams. Like Roope Hintz was either a winger on the second line, or he was the third line center for Finland in the tournament, which is insane to say, since he's our top line center. But that was just kind of the role he was thrust into, and he's being asked to play that role. So maybe that's why he was a little bit more invisible, was just because of the role he was being asked to play. Now, as for Esa, he was absolutely fantastic. Just and I kind of had this argument a little bit with some people, but with I guess it was not really an argument. It was more just a kind of talking about it. But between him, Harley, and Esa, the Stars have an absolutely stacked left side, and there were even
Yeah, they
there.
do.
I was even arguing. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I was almost arguing that Esa is probably more of our number 2 than Harley is.
Yeah.
And Harley played in the tournament as well. So who am I to say that Harley is not the number 2? He's the number 3. But it really just depends on the situation and what we have. And again, it just goes to show how great Jim Nill is at his job, how good the organization is about bringing up these players. It really shows in the international tournaments like this. And sorry, I'm going to go a quick side tangent on this with Harley specifically, because I thought the Harley coming to Team Canada was extremely interesting because he passed over several players that probably more people were looking towards. Like the one that a lot of people were looking at was Bouchard in Edmonton. Like, why did they choose Harley over him? Well, okay, let's be honest. Okay, Bouchard is a good defenseman, but he's more offensively minded than Harley is. But Harley is definitely more well-rounded. I mean, he's one of the few positive players for the Stars, especially on the defensive side. He's been excellent this year for the Stars. And you could even argue he's been a top 10 defenseman in the NHL this year.
Harley's been the Stars' best defenseman. I think we can kind of say that this season.
Yeah, and he's been kind of overlooked, and that's not fair. And when the announcement came out that he was traveling to Boston first, and then he got redirected to Montreal, like it kind of made me think a little bit for a while that he's underappreciated a little bit, especially by Stars fans. It's like, oh yeah, he's a guy that can fill in as number 1. Well, yeah, this is also a guy who's been a top 10 D man, and he got invited to play over some big time defenseman. Like again, Mackenzie Weegar could have been called up by Canada, but they didn't do that. So there were some guys that were definitely more, older and more veteran like, and they asked him to come up, not anybody else. So that's got to feel really good for Thomas Harley.
Yeah, it's a great point. Our coach, I said this with Gavin Spittle the other day. Our coach is from Canada, and when McCarr was out, I said, "Oh, like Thomas Harley's going to get in." He didn't know who he was. He honestly had no clue. And he watches a lot of Habs games. He's a Montreal guy, so he doesn't see the Stars all the time. But I'm telling you, like he had not known who Thomas Harley was, and then he watched me. Oh, a damn good player. I was like, yeah. I was like, he really is. And we always give people flack for not giving Miro enough credit, but I think Miro's starting to get his love nationally. And now some of that love is not being shared on Thomas Harley. He's becoming sort of the new Miro here from a few years ago, like what he's done. Right. So yeah, I just thought that's a great point. That I mean, even like coach from Canada loves hockey. Like, he didn't even know who he was. And he turned some heads.
And the other thing that I thought about also was, and you said it yourself, he's probably been the Stars' best defenseman this year. And it's like and it's crazy to think this, but is Harley becoming the Stars' number 1 defenseman? And Miro is not the number 1 defenseman anymore. So Miro, like Harley is doing to Miro what Miro did to Klingberg. Like, is that happening all over again? And it's interesting to talk about because, none of that conversation came up in my brain until he got called up to play for Team Canada. Had never thought about it. This is Miro's team on the back end. It's absolutely his team. Maybe not so much. I don't know.
They got a great 1-2 punch. Either way, they got a great 1-2 punch with those two. They're going to be in good hands for years to come. It's a great thing that those two are going to be with the Dallas Stars. But I think it is a question that is certainly could be brought up. And everybody knows I'm a Miro stan. I'll die with him as the best Stars defenseman till I go to the grave. But Harley's been great, and he deserves his credit. That's for sure. And we talked about Lindell a little bit too, and I love the point you made. And I brought this up the other day too, because Oettinger's starting to go on the record now, and he's like, Esa Lindell's the best defenseman in the NHL. And I thought about it first, and when you just hear it, you're like, okay, that may be just be a bit hasty. And then I watched the tournament a bit, I'm like, no, it's not. He's top
It's
3
pretty obvious.
easily.
Yeah.
I think he is like as a defenseman. Oh yeah. I mean, with Forsling and him, I think those two are right up there. Yeah, he deserved his little contract extension before the year too. So, it's good that the Stars are pretty locked down there because the right side's a little different of a story. So,
Yeah, it is such, and it's crazy that this is the argument that we're having, right? Or that
Yeah.
Stars you could debate about, right? And there's legitimacy there for either Miro or Harley now. And Harley is going to start being talked about a little bit more in the national media, I think, especially with this tournament. I mean, again, hats off to the NHL for doing this, because like these sort of things wouldn't have happened if they hadn't done this tournament. So again, it just gives us more to talk about. It's fun. It's just fantastic. So I'm looking forward to what the Stars do in the second half.
Yes. And speaking of that, in the right side of this defense, win or lose the Stanley Cup, what's the one reason they do win it? What's the one reason they fall short? I'm going to ask Ryan in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on that fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And the great thing about FanDuel is, as well, you get paid right away. You can cash out, get those winnings, and use it to multiply it more with FanDuel. Right now, the FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Okay, Ryan, this is the big question, and I want everybody else as well to answer in the comments. I came up with this watching the USA game. I needed sort of a take-home segment. So I want to hear your one reason why the Dallas Stars will win the Stanley Cup this season, or one reason why do they fall short again for the third straight year.
The win one is easy, I think.
Okay.
And it's also the lose part too. The reason why they win is their offense comes through. The last couple of years in the playoffs, the Stars did fine defensively, and that's typical in playoff hockey, but they didn't get the goals that they needed. And if you want to dive even deeper into this, and this is something I talked about with Chris and James a little bit in our last episode, I think we need one of our good players to become an elite player.
Yeah,
and
that's a great point.
and someone needs to do something, right? And I mean, we talked about Granlund. Maybe Granlund can be that in the playoffs. I don't know. I doubt it, but your best players have to be your best players. When you look at the playoffs 2 years ago, who was leading the playoffs in scoring? It was Roope Hintz.
Mm-hmm.
He was being an above elite player at that point. When you look last year and you look at the big goals that like Wyatt Johnson, maybe even the last 2 years, actually, the big goals that Wyatt Johnson has scored, right? And again, that's not fair to put on him, but he's got an A on his chest now, and he got it when someone got hurt, and then it hasn't been taken away from him. So, I mean, naturally, even though he's a young guy, he's got to step up. And I don't know if it's and then the other one that I think needs to step up even more is Robertson. And we talk about Robertson and like how invisible he has been in the playoffs sometimes, and how good of a playoffs he had last year, which was way better than 2 years ago. But can you think of one defining moment with Robertson?
No,
in the playoffs. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I could pick like 3 for Wyatt Johnston already, and he's been in 3 years.
and then Duchesne. I mean,
Yeah.
Duchesne has not been that player, but last year he ended the Colorado Avalanche's season, and it's just like somebody has got to step up, and it can't be Jamie Benn, and it can't be I don't know. It's probably got to be either Wyatt Johnston or Jason Robertson or somebody else like that. They've got to get it going because it's going to be really important for one of those three guys to step up. The offense is going to be the reason why they win because the goaltending is going to be fine. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the defense is going to be fine too.
I like that point. I would say outside of just, the best players have to be the best players. I'm not going to go with the cop out answer. I'm going to go with Liam Bichsel becomes your Thomas Harley this season in the postseason, sort of like a few years ago when Harley came in at the end of the year and sort of bursted on the scene and was like, okay, like he can play at this level, not only at the NHL level, but like in the postseason after playing just like a handful of games and really broke out and has been with the Stars ever since. I think if Bichsel can come in and be a guy that you can rely on for 15 minutes a night in the postseason and you really trust, I think would do massive, massive things for the Stars back end. And also I think they got to add another body on the defensive side. I don't really care who it is. I just think they have to get somebody else in there to shore it up. And this also, bear in mind, comes with a pretty much fully healthy Star side. I think you got Miro in the lineup, of course. You got Seguin, and you feel really good about your group. I think if Bichsel can sort of slide in, and then you're going to be like, okay, like Bischel's playing good hard minutes. You got Lindell, you got Harley, and you got Miro, and then Lyubushkin. I think you could add that. You can add him to that. It's like 5 pretty good, solid pieces on your back. And I would argue more than good with the Harleys and Lindells of the world. If you can get 5 strong defensemen and Bichsel becomes one of them, and then you just kind of have that depth piece that you just need to kind of sort of chew up minutes. And maybe that's Petrovic. Like, who knows? Maybe that's an answer. If you're not going to trust Dumba down the stretch, if they're not able to get rid of him, I think a lot of Stars fans would like to get rid of that contract. I just don't know how Dallas is going to be able to do that with who Matt Dumba is at this point. But I just have a feeling he could play a massive role in the Stars postseason run because he as I've said so many times before, people probably hate me hearing it. He just gives Dallas something different on the back end. They don't have with any other D-men. Okay, enough of my rambling. But what's the reason they lose? Is it sort of the same thing? The back end just gets worn out again, or is it really just the offense? You think that's the big reason if the offense just goes cold like it has, especially the power play? Good night. I can't watch a power play fizzle out in the Western Conference Final again.
That was I thought of 2 reasons. That was the first one was the offense just fizzling out because again the Stars have been fine defensively in the playoffs and maybe that's why Chris, my brother, argues because I'm in agreement with you. I think they need another defenseman. Just you can never have enough defensemen, right? That's one of Nils' sayings. He wants Brock Nelson. He wants somebody else to come in and score goals. He wants another forward. And I'm like, Chris, we're talking about Granlund being on the 4th line. If that happens, if you go out and get chart. Yes, exactly. and that's not necessarily a bad thing to have, but I think ultimately the reason why the Stars would lose in the Stanley Cup playoffs is if they succumb to some of their injuries. And I think the worst one would be Jake Oettinger. You can live without Miro, and we've shown that we can live without Miro and be okay. Not great, but okay. And still be able to gain points in the standings. And I mean, the Stars are 3rd in the NHL right now with Miro being out for a week and a half now. But just Jake Oettinger, I mean, he showed it tonight. He's a big game goalie and he's only gotten better with age. And he did it again tonight. He made a giant save with like 3.5 minutes remaining in that game. It's no offense to Casey DeSmith and it's no offense to Magnus Hellberg, but they are not Jake Oettinger. And if he does not play up to at least an above average level, I don't see the Stars being able to overcome that facet of their game if it's not there. Do I expect that to happen and he be bad in the playoffs? I don't, because he's shown he can. But that's the reason why they would lose in the playoffs, I think, because there's so many different ways they can do it.
Yeah, and my argument with Otter has always been too, because people haven't loved what he's done in the postseason. I'm like, well, you haven't loved him, and he's been to the Western Conference Final 2 years straight.
Twice.
I
Yeah.
mean, he's a goal, and he's the goalie. I mean, we can blame it all on him, and I'll be, I can hear it. Like he hasn't been stellar, but I'm like, well, he hasn't been stellar, and he's still. And look, I get it. Sometimes it's the team in front of him is fantastic, but at the end of the day. Look at Canada and look at Bennington. I think that's probably going to be a big reason why they fall on Thursday night is because of Bennington. And by the way, I saw on Twitter it was precautionary. The reason Brady Tkachuk was kind of held out there, they don't seem it's going to be an issue. Just to bring that up. But anyways, yeah, I'm so. I'm so not worried about Otter, and I think he's having quietly a really the most consistent season of his career. I don't know if it's the best numbers. They are, sort of there at where his best season, his career season has been, but I think his is the most consistent, which is big. I think they really do. They just need like a puck moving defenseman, like someone that can basically be like a one-man exit, like Thomas Harley and Miro, or somebody that just can move the puck. Because that right side, man, with CC right now, and Dumba, it's just I think teams are really going to exploit them if they're playing heavy minutes. So if they can add someone that can just move the puck, be a facilitator, I think that will pay dividends down the line. And of course, if injuries always play a role. You got to be sort of survival of the fittest, and you got to have some luck here and there. I think you always got to have some bounces, and I did a podcast with a bunch of the different channels here in Locked On, and I think the real feeling is just around consensus is just it's a pretty hodgepodge of teams in the West, and I think there's a lot of question. Winnipeg's great. We think hopefully there's something different, but there's always in the back of the mind like, oh, they first round exit a lot. Minnesota's had a lot of injury issues. In Edmonton, Vegas is a team I do not want to see. I'll tell you that right now. Vegas, I think, is probably going to have a deep run. I really do. And correct. Yeah. Screw Vegas, but I don't want to
screw
see
Jack Eichel, even though we praised him earlier
exactly.
in the same podcast.
Yeah. We're not going to pump his tires anymore. We're done until Thursday night, possibly. But yeah, I just think it's a real hodgepodge. And, I think there's just I think it really is a realistic, feeling, or the Western Conference Final is really possible, even with the way the Stars are currently constructed. And I don't love the way they're constructed right now, but I think even if they didn't make any more changes, I think they could win 2 rounds. And maybe that's a bit naive, but I really do think if you get the right opponents, of course, I think that plays into it. But I think they could win 2 rounds, or at least give somebody a scare in the second. And I'd always say this: if you got Miro we'll circle back to this point, because having Miro not in the regular season is one thing. In the postseason, it's going to be completely different. Like, he can control the flow of a hockey game. I don't know if Harley's quite there yet. We're seeing shades of that. I think if we see Harley by himself in the postseason, if Miro somehow's not able to go and he's just doing what he is doing, I'm like, okay, all right. Like, this guy's like, we got bona fide 2 number ones now. But I think he'll be a big difference, man. If you got Miro back there too, man, I mean, he's good enough to win you some 2 rounds. I feel like, if he's on, because he outplayed Makar in that series a year ago, and he was the best defenseman against Vegas, and he fell short against Bouchard. And Bouchard's not even close to the type of player he is. And I like Bouchard. Okay. I think he's okay, but not even close to what Miro is, but he outplayed him in that series, like hands down. Outplayed Miro. Probably a lot of that was the power play, and when you got McDavid to facilitate too. But yeah, I mean, there's just a host of things I think the Stars team needs, and I just think there's so many questions, and we're all saying this, and the Stars are 3rd in the NHL, which is stupid. I don't know how they've done it. I really don't. I think credit to coaching too. It's Pete and DeBoer and the staff has been good. And things seem to be turning around. I'll say that.
And it just shows the expectation of this team, right? Like, even though that at one point they were at the basically the mercy of the Utah Hockey Club of being out of the playoffs early on in the season, they were like, oh crap. and we haven't had that conversation since, right? That hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And to your question about the defense, I really think what you have to look at is, let's assume that Miro is back. If Miro is back, then I feel like you have to play Harley and him together at this point. So you look at those two guys playing together on the top pairing. You look at a second pairing of Lindell and probably Lyubushkin, and then a third pairing of probably Bischel, and then on the right side, Cece, right?
Yeah.
And then now your question is that decor good enough to get you into the Stanley Cup final? Is that a decor? Is it a playoff team? Absolutely. Is it a top 10 team? Yes. Top 5 team? Yes. Is it a Stanley Cup contending, Stanley Cup winning decor?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think the question more so is Lyubushkin able to elevate his game? And he's been great. He's been absolutely great this year. Like, he's been way better than Dumba. And we expected Dumba to be better than Lyubushkin. But is he the answer as that number 4 defenseman pairing? Because, and then the other question is and there's only one guy out there that I would say fits this mold for the Dallas Stars. Is there really anyone out there that can take that number 4 role? And I think the answer is no. So I know they keep talking about, oh, well, Jim Nill's not done. Mm-hmm. I think he's probably just going to be done, other than maybe going out and getting another right-handed depth defenseman, so we don't have to see Dumba in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think that's what it's at. So maybe they go out and get like I can't remember if Savard is right-handed, but someone like Savard, someone who can be a number 5, number 6, and number 7, and then that pushes Dumba down the depth chart. I think that's the question you have to ask. And I mean, Noah Dobson, I'll just go ahead and say his name. Noah Dobson is the only player that fits that mantra of someone who can play in your top 4 right here, right now, and can do that same thing better than Lyubushkin. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, are you willing to part with the stuff that is going to be required to get Dobson out of the Islanders? And I don't think that's an answer.
Yeah, which is going to be Wyatt Johnston. I think the GM came out and said they want like an elite scoring forward. It's going to have to be Wyatt Johnston. I'll be honest, if they would take Maverick Bourque, I would do it. And I love Maverick Bourque. I even kind of hate to say that, but if they were that high on Maverick Bourque, I think that would be. I would be get him in here, get Dobson in here. I just I feel like if the Stars called,
it's not going to do it.
It's only going to be Wyatt Johnston like that. He just, elite scoring forward. I think he's kind of there. Well, I mean, maybe he's not elite scoring, but just a two-way guy, and he's young and has room to grow. But if I had to answer your question too about the 16 man you brought up, and can they be a Stanley Cup contender? I feel like I'll say this. I feel like they could, because we sort of saw Edmonton do it last season. But the Stars do not have Connor McDavid, and they don't have enough elite talent. And that brings up your question. Can you have someone good become like great or elite? Because, let's look at Game 7. I'm looking at it right now here for Edmonton. They had Cece, they had Bouchard, they had Proberg, who was a bit of a question mark. I think he was just a rookie, and he just slid into the postseason in that Stars series. And then you got Ekholm. Yeah, Ekholm, who's great. A Kulak, who I don't think people are very high on, and then you had Darnell Nurse, and we all know he's So I would say, like, on paper, I think you feel like those 6 defensemen could be better than what Edmonton was trotting out there. But again, as I mentioned, like, do the Stars have that elite guy they can go to? Can Jason Robertson come on board and have like a playoff, like have some defining moments, right? And can you have some of those moments where we think back in 7 years, well, remember that goal, in Game 6 that Robo had? Can you have one of those moments? So I think you mentioned those 6 defensemen. I feel pretty good about them. I don't know if they get to the Stanley Cup, but I think they get to a Western Conference final. And what was the decors the Stars had, a few years ago when they got there? They had Miro, they had Harley, of course. It was Lindell. Who else? Sorry,
Klingberg.
Yeah,
Are you talking
yeah.
about the bubble?
No, I was talking about the Vegas series, the Vegas one they lost.
Oh,
Because he had
Tanev.
okay, no, well, the one previous, the one
Oh,
before Tanev. Sorry,
bro.
I'm completely blank because he had Suter there. Like I don't think there was a ton of big name. I mean, like he had Suter, he had Miro, he had Harley, Lindell. That was 4. I can't even think of the other 5, which is embarrassing. And I'm doing a Stars podcast, but I think that kind of tells the story too. I don't think I can. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker here, but I gotta have to go to Hockey Reference. It's gonna kill me, so we're gonna do it now. Who were they trotting out there? Okay. Oh, okay. Colin Miller and Yanni Hakanpää. There you go. Okay, yeah. So I mean, yeah, Hakanpää, Miller, and I don't think Miller was. I think Miller got subbed out because for Harley at that point, and he had Joel Hanley who was playing big minutes. So I mean, if you look at 2 years ago to now, and you mentioned those 6 defensemen, I think you feel pretty darn good. And I'll admit, I thought Suter was pretty decent in that postseason too. For as much hate as he got here in Dallas, I thought it was pretty decent up until that Vegas series, of course.
Well, my only, and this is kind of a pessimistic way of looking at it, but did any of those teams win the Stanley Cup? Any of the ones
exactly.
None of them.
Yeah.
Edmonton didn't win it. We didn't win it. Vegas didn't win it that year. But you know when they did win? Was in 2023. And that year they had 6 solid guys. No one played less than 16 minutes, and no one played more than like 22.
It's a great point.
So I mean, and they were all solid. So yeah, it's that. I hate to say it like that, but
damn you, Ryan, killing my hope. You really are. No, but you're right though. Like who I mean, look at Florida. They're deep as hell. Looked at the Vegas team. They're deep as hell. I think really the last team that, God, even that Colorado team was very deep on the back end. And they had the elite talent to go with it. So yeah, I guess you may fall short anyways, but one can dream that we can get to the playoffs with Cody Ceci as the 6th defenseman. One can dream, Ryan.
It can happen. It can happen.
Yes. Well, I guess a team did it last year. Unfortunately, the Stars just don't have 97 on their squad. All right, we'll end with that. Ryan, thanks for coming on. It's a bit spontaneous. I saw you tweeting about the U.S. game, and I was like, I should ask if you want to do an episode after. So I appreciate you jumping on and giving your time. I'm sure you're going to have a busy week. But please sure to plug Starcastic remarks. Any plans upcoming? I'm sure you guys are going to get back down to business here after a few weeks off.
Yep, we got a live episode that we do every Wednesday night at 9:30, so you can look forward to that. We'll be previewing the Thursday night game. We're actually going to do a watch along for the Thursday night game against the U.S. and Canada, so that's going to be fun for us to do. And hopefully, I won't be yelling and screaming too much. And then I mean, it's just back to business as usual. I mean, Saturday, 3 games in 4 days is going to be nuts. It's going to be fun. And we're going to be all the way to the Stanley Cup final, hopefully winning the whole thing here. So
yes, yeah, it's going to be a playoff push for Dallas and us, us podcasters who are sacrificing time, sacrificing our bodies, our voices to bring you this content every single day. So we have all the answers. That's the good thing. We know all of the answers. Ryan, thanks again. It was awesome to catch up with you. And we're going to catch up before, the end of the year. We'll catch up multiple times, probably during the postseason too. So look forward to that. Everybody, Stars fans out there, have a great week. Yeah, a little road trip to kick off the post 4 Nations break for the Stars. So we'll get into that in the next future episodes. I think I have a fun guest planned, somebody within the Devils organization, which will be good. She's an old friend of mine, so hopefully I can rope her in. We went to college together, so hopefully she'll come on and talk some Devils hockey. And Jesper Bratt had the game-winning goal tonight. Can you believe it? The old Devil blew it against Otter. Anyways, enough rambling. Let's get out of here. Have a great rest of your day, Stars fans. See you tomorrow.